Although folks, we're now just a few days away from the launch of patch 11.20 Ghosts of Koresh, and with patch development likely now in a code freeze, this week the World of Warcraft news has been dominated by last minute tuning updates, along with a little sneak peek at some major improvements to the Cooldown Manager. One thing for sure that has been the source of a lot of worry for players is the upcoming update to the player character bank, which with the launch of the patch will see the existing bank, reagent bank and void storage be combined into a new all-in-one tabbed bank. These concerns from players are perfectly understandable. In the war within, both the Warband Bank and Guild Banks have had their issues, with the latter resulting in some guilds permanently losing items from their banks. I'm personally planning to transfer any items that I'll be needing for the first couple of weeks from my bank to my bags, as even Blizzard themselves have warned that there could be delays with the bank conversion, especially at busy times. The good news though is that there are strong signs that Blizzard have been stepping up their testing this time around, and that testing has revealed a bit of a corner case that might well affect some players. Back when the Transmog Appearance Collection system was introduced at the start of Legion, Blizzard deprecated some cosmetic only items such as the Jewel of the Firelord or Crown of Eternal Winter, and those particular items along with other things like keys disappeared from our bags and bank at the time. It turns out that where those items had been put into void storage, they managed to survive that kill and still remain there unless we take them out, of course, in which case they do vanish. And this week Blizzard have confirmed that their testing has revealed that the migration process to the bank will also cause those particular items to disappear. It is worth saying that this technically is not an issue with the bank conversion. The continued existence of those otherwise deleted items in void storage was in itself a bug, which is now at long last being resolved. Moving on now to tuning, and when it comes to recent special gear items like the Cersei Circlet Ring or the Titan Disc Belt, it has become a bit of a tradition for them to get last minute buffs to make them a lot more interesting, and the new Season 3 cloak, the Reshi Wraps, is no exception, with just at the end of last week its special effects getting buffs of between 150 and 200%. This week the DPS and healing effects got even more tuning, with the DPS effect Ethereal Reaping getting another 30% buff, and the healing effect Ethereal Reconstitution an 11.5% buff. It's fair to say that tanks have been a lot less impressed with their own special effect, which is a combination of an absorb shield and an effective cheat death. And sadly, that effect this week has got another 7% nerf. Now, I do think that this effect will be quite valuable for tanks, especially early on in the season, but later on when we're all fully geared and survival becomes a non-issue in mainstream content, I do think it is going to feel a bit meh. In the short term though, the main issue for tanks is going to turn out to be threat, I expect. The changes to the DPS cloak are going to significantly increase the damage gap between tanks and DPS, and with that extra damage being very bursty and also not very controllable, many tanks are now expecting that threat could potentially be an issue at the start of the season. Blizzard did recently buff threat, but even with those buffs, maintaining threat at the end of Season 2 was starting to become an issue with some bursty DPS classes. Having DPS get one shot by melee at the start of a large Mythic Plus pool isn't much fun for either tanks or DPS, nor is DPS having to semi-AFK in pool. Blizzard in recent expansions has, in my view, been far too slow to act upon issues with tank threat, and I do hope that this changes this time around, and that they do another final pass on tank threat before the season starts. Staying in the subject of the cloak, and this is designed to pair with special boots which drop from the raid. These boots boost the effect of the cloak, and until recently that was by a flat 50%. This has now been adjusted, with the effect now scaling with the upgrade tier of the gear, starting at 20% for Veteran and rising up to 50% for the Myth Track versions. It is worth saying that this effect does not seem to change with the individual item level upgrades, although it's not currently fully confirmed if that remains true for the entirety of the upgrade track. The overall impact of this change is to make the boots a lot less interesting for non-Mythic raiders, although I suspect that Mythic Plus and PvP players may still end up chasing the heroic versions. If you're a bit of a lore fan, as part of the lead-in to the new patch, Blizzard have been releasing a series of audio logs from Koresh, which provide a first-person eyewitness account of the events leading up to the fall of Koresh. These are designed to dovetail with the recent audiobook, which tells the same story from the perspective of Locust Walker. I'm not going to go into details here to avoid spoilers, but I will say that these are very relevant to the new campaign storyline. So if you do enjoy questing or following the lore, they are for sure worth a look. And I will link to them below along with the main YouTube WoW channel, as I do suspect that there are more to come. Moving now just briefly into the live game, and believe it or not, it's now August. I have to say that this year does seem to be flying past, but it does mean that we have a brand new trading post, and this month's theme is chess. A bunch of chess themed cosmetics were data mined quite a while ago, and they are now at long last putting in an appearance, including 2 brand new mounts. The first new mount is available for sale for 700 tender, and it's the Grandmaster's Royal Board. And the second mount is this month's bonus reward, the Grandmaster's Prophetic Board. It does appear that this month the Traveller's Log, after being extended to 1400 points and 3 rewards last month, is sadly returning back to normal, with just 1 reward this time around. I do think that that is a great shame. It was great to see the team innovating to make the log a bit more interesting last month, and being able to earn more than 1 item from the post and having to do a bit more to do it is something that I would like to see a bit more of in the future. In addition to those brand new mounts, we're also seeing the return of 2 mounts from last August's trading post as well. The Corkron War Sabre and the Sentinel's War Wolf. And for fans of Transmog, there are 2 full chess-themed ensembles, the Grandmaster's Royal Attire and the Grandmaster's Prophetic Attire, along with matching shields, maces and staffs. And for this week's update, there is some time for a bit of a preview of some upcoming major improvements to the Cooldown Manager. The Cooldown Manager is effectively a built-in replacement for those weak aura based head-up displays like those made by Luxos, and it is also the first of many user interface additions that Blizzard are hoping will help us to reduce our reliance in combat add-ons. Sadly, the first version of the Cooldown Manager, when it launched in patch 11.15, was rightly heavily criticised for a lack of customization, visual overload, along with some serious omissions in what it tracked. When it was first announced, I personally was looking forward to it as a potential alternative to weak orders on my alts. But like I suspect many players, it didn't work for me when it went live. The end result, of course, is that I still have all those Luxos weak orders running on my account. This week, Blizzard have responded to that player feedback with a major update in which they share the future plans for the Cooldown Manager. Now, it's worth clarifying that this is not going to be a part of a patch 11.20 next week. Blizzard have not shared any timescales for their new plans, which they describe as wireframes. Essentially, they're pre-development visual mock-ups, so I personally don't think that we will see them in patch 11.25 either. Far more likely it's going to be 11.27 or even the midnight pre-patch. And the headline change is the addition of customizations. These are going to include the ability to pick and choose what appears in the Cooldown Manager, use drag and drop to change the order abilities are shown, and even move them between the different frames. We're also going to be able to turn tooltips and ability timers on and off, choose between bars or icons, and even include unlearned abilities. The developers are also planning to add a lot more flexibility in what we can track, and that's going to include the ability to track our offensive dots and debuffs, see when they are missing, and for tanks especially, the ability to track external defensives like pain suppression or life cocoon. By far the most surprising change for me though is the addition of customizable sound alerts. I know that a lot of players do play with sound off, but many, especially high-level players, do use sound alerts as a way of highlighting very important events, or just as a tool to help them reduce visual overload. and this has the potential to make the new Cooldown Manager much more powerful and useful. Add in options to customize size and potentially even the ability to save and swap configurations, and this could turn the Cooldown Manager into a real competitor to those weak order packs. Blizzard did not say if the saved loadouts could be shareable, similar to those talent tree loadouts, but I do hope that they do include that as an option. While I personally like to customize my head-up display for my most played classes, as someone with an extended alt army of classes and specs that I really only use for leveling, I'd very much prefer to outsource the setup for those less played classes. Obviously, the developers will provide the default layout, but that ties it to one particular design, which probably won't work for everyone. Allowing the community to share loadouts would greatly increase the possible options for people who need a little bit of help with their setup. I'd personally be well up, for example, for a set of Luxos Cooldown Manager loadouts. One thing that is missing from the current plans though is resource tracking. One of the major features of weak order based head-up displays is tracking things like resource bars and mana bars, which are otherwise only visible under the player's health bar, which is suboptimal at best, and for those classes with multiple resources to juggle, next to useless. If I had one piece of feedback for the developers, it would be to add options to track resources into the Cooldown Manager. I think that for many players, this will turn out to be the final make or break feature that will determine if they are willing to give up the weak order packs and swap to the built-in version. Stepping back a moment, and I do think it's really great to see the development team taking the feedback about the Cooldown Manager head on. When the Cooldown Manager was originally tested on the PTR, I do recall that the developer response to the feedback at the time came across as very defensive and dismissive. And this update is a complete turnaround in that attitude, and it gives me genuine hope that the team have learned some important lessons. It's also really great to see the team continuing the trend that was initially started by the housing team by sharing their designs at an early stage. Blizzard have for many years been very reluctant to share works in progress, likely in part due to a fear of being called out if their plans change. But the earlier that we players can get feedback into the developers, the easier it is for them to make changes. Looking beyond just the Cooldown Manager, I, like many players, have had some worries about the developers' longer term plans to restrict add-ons access to combat related information. My own biggest worry was that the developers would rush into that process before the built-in replacements were truly ready, and the original launch of the Cooldown Manager was a major contributor to that fear. Taking time out to make such an extensive update to the Cooldown Manager is for sure going to slow down the development of those other user interface features. Blizzard do not have infinite developers after all, and seeing that the developers are willing to take that hit does give me a lot more confidence that they plan to adopt the more measured pace that is needed to ensure that the move to a world with less combat add-ons does end up working out for players. And finally, Blizzard have been a little inconsistent with Twitch drops of late, but the launch of 11.2.0 is going to come with one. Just link your Twitch account to your Battle.net account and then watch any World of Warcraft stream for 4 hours between August the 5th and September the 2nd, and you can earn the Shade for Brew Thief pet. I am planning to live stream my initial dive into the new patch on the EU reset day, which is Wednesday afternoon, and I will have drops enabled if you'd like to earn it while catching up on all the new stuff. And that's it for this week's news. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you think these changes to the Cooldown Manager will be enough to get you to switch? Or perhaps you already use it? Let me know in the comments below, along with what you're most looking forward to in the new patch. If you found this update helpful, entertaining, or even just plain annoying, then let me know by hitting that like icon. And if you want to support my channel to grow and help me to make more of these videos along with my other content, then hit that subscribe button right now before you forget. And if you don't want to miss out whenever I release a new video, then as well as subscribing, you can follow me on social media for notifications. My links are in the description below as well. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.